Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hivemind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Clarence Thomas is back, the most base Supreme Court justice of all time. The man has seen it all, he's experienced it all, and he is the perfect guy to just take it to the left. Every now and then you get someone like Clarence Thomas who just combats the leftist narrative beyond belief. There are so many things that lefties try to use against Republicans, labels and terms, slander, that just doesn't work against someone like Clarence Thomas, who's seemingly our only hope. Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, you are our only hope to combat the tech overlords, the oligarchs in Silicon Valley. And he takes that responsibility very, very seriously, and we might actually be headed in the right direction. You know politicians aren't going to do a thing about it. Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, the whole lot of them talk a big game but can't really do much. Clarence Thomas, on the other hand, is nothing but action and is a man who has always put his actions where his mouth is. And so if he is on the record going after big tech, you know it's serious. And we got to talk about big tech in general. We got to talk about censorship. We got a lot to get into, but before we do, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Clarence Thomas, Supreme Court will soon have to address tech censorship. This is exactly what I want to see, and it's actually the first real concrete hint in the direction of true Section 230 reform. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas today outlined a detailed legal argument for why social media companies might need to be subject to strict rules forbidding them from denying service to users for any reason or reason, including the possibility of designating them as common carriers, which would effectively eliminate their ability to ban or censor users for legal First Amendment protected speech. This is what I'm talking about. Thomas outlined his opinion in a concurrence to reject a case that began under the Trump administration challenging the president's right to block users from his Twitter feed. However, Thomas indicated that the Supreme Court will soon have to address the issue of tech censorship. We will soon have no choice but to address how our legal doctrines apply to highly concentrated, privately owned information infrastructure such as digital platforms, wrote Thomas. Such a case would likely encompass many of the complaints brought by conservatives against social media companies. Social media censorship has intensely escalated over the past few years, with targets of bans and censorship, including elected officials like President Donald Trump, political candidates like Laura Loomer, and news organizations like Breitbart News and the New York Post. Today's digital platforms provide avenues for historically unprecedented amounts of speech, including speech by government actors. Also unprecedented, however, is the concentrated control of so much speech in the hands of a few private parties. The disparity between Twitter's control and Mr. Trump's control is stark, to say the least. Mr. Trump blocked several people from interacting with his messages. Twitter barred Mr. Trump not only from interacting with a few users, but removed him from the entire platform, thus barring all Twitter users from interacting with his messages. If part of the problem is private concentrated control over online content and platforms available to the public, then part of the solution may be found in the doctrines that limit the right of a private company to exclude. Historically, at least two legal doctrines limited a company's right to exclude. First, our legal system and its British predecessor have long subjected certain businesses known as common carriers to special regulations, including a general requirement to serve all comers, can-do bargaining for free speech, common carriage, network neutrality in Section 230. Justifications for these regulations have varied. Some scholars have argued that common carrier regulations are justified only when a carrier possesses substantial. And so you guys get the rest of the argument, and I just think it makes sense. You know, in the past, phones are really the only way for people to communicate in real time. Now, a lot of that has gone on places like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Discord if you're from a younger generation. And we have tech companies that are controlling what can and can't be said. You guys might not know this, but back from the 2020 election, the New York Post got banned, Kayleigh McEnany got banned for just sharing a link from the New York Post, a historic news publication, not only from just tweeting it and sharing it, but you couldn't even DM it to people on your private messaging list. That's ridiculous. That's Twitter, Jack Dorsey, and a bunch of partisan Democrat tech people telling you what you can and can't say, can and can't link in a private conversation with your friends and family. That's messed up. That's un-American. On YouTube, on this platform right now, there are regulations which can terminate your channel if you just combat the Democrat narrative. Not even saying necessarily I stand on one side or the other, but they label certain things as fact that are disputed by millions upon millions of people, and they don't allow those millions of people their voice in public debate and public discussion. Based on Section 230 and the common carrier element that Clarence Thomas just mentioned, when companies gain such incredible power and control over a market, that's when it's time to apply that that law to stop them from controlling what consumers can and can't talk about, or can and can't say, who's welcome and who isn't. They have such unprecedented power. They control what people see, what shows up on your smartphone, what shows up on your computer, what you get notified by, what's pushed in front of you on the algorithm, what's on the trending list. It's all manufactured. It's all controlled by partisan Democrats. The trending tab on YouTube is never anything remotely right-wing or politically right whatsoever. Alex Jones did a podcast with Joe Rogan that got like 10 million views in a single day. It wasn't on the trending tab, but videos with like 300,000 views were there. That's manipulation. That's control. Twitter's trending tab has what's actually trending within the community, but then also has little insertions that Twitter makes. Stories of the day. During Trump's entire presidency, there was never anything good. The only thing that they artificially put there for millions upon millions to see worldwide were negative stories about Trump constantly infiltrating the political sphere and influencing people's perception with their unprecedented control over information and who gets to see it. And they're doing the exact same thing. They create a social stigma. This is the narrative. This is what's accepted. If you don't agree with it, if you talk against it, if you even potentially just question the narrative, you're automatically a terrible person. I mean, this is what they've been doing for the coof pandemic the entire time. Republicans were saying wear a mask. Democrats were specifically saying don't wear a mask. I used to work in a very liberal environment. Back in February, even January, right when this thing started, like immediately on Chinese New Year, I remember avoiding a Chinese New Year festival because I was worried about this coof pandemic. I was wearing a mask before anybody else. I was the crazy person walking in the street with a mask just because I didn't know what was going on. I was trying to be preventative. I heard of this virus. I was taking proper steps. I worked in tech. I went to the office and people were telling me I'm crazy. The most liberal person in the office, like HR type person, was on the community chat group, it's called Slack, talking about how masks don't work. I pretty much guarantee you that person in present day probably has masks save lives, wear your damn mask in their Twitter bio. Things are shifting, but we can't have conversations. We're not allowed to discuss. Wherever the Democrats land on for the day, that's the narrative. And other narratives, people questioning the leftist narrative, cannot even be brought up. In many cases, on this platform, on YouTube and on others, you can be subject to channel termination or account termination if you do. Meanwhile, Dr. Fauci can say one thing, then another, contradict the science, contradict the CDC. When questioned about what's going on in Texas now with the numbers going down, act like a deer caught in the headlights, just like Jen Psaki, push another mistruth, and it's okay because he's the legendary leftist Dr. Fauci. I mean, just look at this.
You mentioned Texas and that full ballpark in Arlington yesterday. There was a lot of concern last month when Texas effectively opened up, dropped all those restrictions. We've seen cases and hospitalizations since then continue to tick downward. So what do you make of that as all of us look around and sort of try to consider how safe it is to get back to normal life?
Yeah, you know, it can be confusing because you may see a lag and a delay because often you have to wait a few weeks before you see the effect of what you're doing right now.
He doesn't know what's going on in Texas. And he also says, we need time. We need a couple weeks to see how it plays out. Texas went 100% open and lifted their mask mandate over a month ago. You need a couple weeks. I mean, come on. I said time will tell, but nothing will convince the Democrats that maybe there's merit to another person's argument. Once again, we can't have these conversations. We're not allowed to even talk about it. Whatever the Democrats say goes, and the social media companies, the tech overlords, enforce it. And so Section 230 reform, I hope, is right around the corner. I hope something serious actually comes to fruition here. And if there's one man to do it, his name is Clarence Thomas. And so, of course, he's the biggest threat to liberal supremacy. So they employ the age-old Democrat tactic of calling him a white supremacist. Check this out. I can't believe this Justice Thomas guy still has his job after his wife stormed the Capitol. He's clearly a white supremacist. It's insane that he's impacting our laws with his bias. Let's take a look at this right over here. White supremacist, he says. So get ready, folks, because if Clarence Thomas gets any more based and starts pushing this forward, the slander from the left and the leftist activism group mob mentality will be put into full effect, and that is how you know we're winning. That's a video that I got for you guys, though. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I want to thank you guys for watching, though, and I'll see you on the next one.